With me now and throughout the show, my fabulous panel. A couple of old friends of mine join me on the sofa. Comedian Leo Kearse.
Hello.
Funniest man this side of Gibraltar. And the brilliant political commentator and writer Alys Watson Brown makes a welcome return to the show. Another old pal and his first appearance on Mark Dolan Tonight. Broadcaster and DJ Edward Adoo.
How you doing,
chaps and ladies, great to have you on the show. Edward, let's wet your whistle with this particular topic. What do you think about the fact that many people feel we live in a semi-democracy now, that the COVID measures are being obviously put through by the government, but supported by the opposition?
Yeah, it's a lot of people, they think it's a no-brainer. There's got to be, at some point, a compromise. And, you know, not so much my line as a broadcaster, but as a DJ, I'm kind of worried because there's a lot of venues and clients that I work with, and they're sort of up in arms as to whether to book DJs next year because they don't know whether we're going to be in lockdown. So all the measures that are being put in place or taken at the moment, it's kind of jeopardizing a lot of things. It's obviously it's about the variant, it's about the virus, but it should be down to common sense and obviously the logistics around the economy. Now, for someone like me, I don't want to knock on the government's door in a couple of months' time and say, well, listen, I can't earn because I can't go and DJ because, you know, the economy is shut down and all the venues where I play at, they're shut because of these measures in place. So I think somewhere along the line, there has to be a compromise in order to resolve this.
Well, that's right, Edward. I mean, look, the bottom line is that, you know, the person that discovered the South African variant, of course, this Omicron, you know, she has said it appears to be very mild. There isn't a single reported death from this particular variant anywhere in the world. And I'm just worried, Edward, that actually this safety-first policy is rather dangerous.
In some degree, to someone who is very much anxious and vulnerable about this situation as to where we go from here, hearing what's going on in the news, it's going to make them more anxious and vulnerable, and it's going to put them in a really dark place. I know many people prior to the virus who were sort of upbeat, outgoing people, and suddenly this is just, in a sense, it's put them in a very, very dark place to the point where they don't want to even pick up the phone because they don't know what's around the corner. So I think those are the people who we need to look out for, those vulnerable and those anxious people, because we need to bring them round, because the way things are going, we may not see those people ever again.
Let me ask you, Leo, this idea of just in case. For me, it doesn't cut it, given the enormous impact on the economy and society of Plan B measures. The narrative around COVID and COVID measures is that somehow this is a small price to pay, that these are relatively sort of low-level measures. I don't think they're low-level at all.
No, they're not low-level, and we can see from the previous lockdown, it's not like lockdown just saves lives, it also costs lives. So there were, 740,000 missed cancer diagnoses during lockdown to save people who, not to be cruel, but COVID mainly kills is a contributing factor in the deaths of people who are quite close to death. They're in their late 80s. So we're sort of throwing healthy people under the bus to save ill people. And to be honest, I don't trust the government. I'm much more worried about the government than I am about coronavirus. And Omicron's come out. It's funny that it's just come out just at the point where all the government contracts that they signed with their cronies, the start of lockdown to, the fast-track VIP contracts for PPE, Matt Hancock's former landlord getting a contract, Owen Patterson getting backhanders from Randox. The government ministers are making so much money, backhanders from all these, and consulting for all these companies that they're giving contracts to. As soon as that gravy train finishes, suddenly Omicron comes along, so they get to arrange more contracts and skim off more money. Transparency International looked at these contracts and said that 20% are corrupt, which probably means that 50% are corrupt. I think the government's making money from this, so they've got a vested interest in seeing lockdown and seeing the pandemic progress. And I think people are dying for the wrong reasons.
Yes, and of course the government would argue that these lockdown measures of the last year and a half to 2 years have been about saving lives and making sure the NHS is not overwhelmed. And that, of course, would be the majority public view. Alys Watson Brown, why aren't we seeing more opposition from Keir Starmer? Why no reluctance to actually adopt Plan B?
I agree. It's incredible. Keir Starmer made a very emotive opposition to the reveal this week of Downing Street parties. He used the picture of the Queen at Prince Philip's funeral. He said, how can you do this to her? When he's the one voting for supposedly that to happen again, God forsake if that did. It's absolutely outrageous. Angela Rayner was on the radio earlier this week, and she was questioned by saying, look at South Africa, 26% of that population are double jabbed, and there are no hospitalizations, no deaths from this Omicron variant, and she had no answer. These people have no idea what they're actually voting for, what is going to happen to the regular people who are supporting them. And we haven't been living in a democracy for the past 18 months. We have not. The Coronavirus Act was still not repealed. It was renewed for 6 months. And we've had this sword of Damocles of vaccine passports, of new restrictions, mask wearing, hanging over us. And we did not realise it, and we've had to act now. And Steve Baker should have done this sooner. We are not seeing enough opposition, and it is detrimental to the health of our country.
What do you think about the Prime Minister's future? Do you think he should be looking over his shoulder, Alys?
I agree. I hope so. I hope that Liz Truss sort of steps up to the plate and manages to get into the top job. I think we need someone like her. There was reports today of Priti Patel going into, hopefully not, going into the top job. I don't know how else she would do. He has got no credibility, Boris Johnson. And if it was any other Prime Minister in any other situation, surrounded by the same amount of scandals that he had, he should have resigned immediately.
Alys, have you previously been a supporter of Boris?
I was. I'm not embarrassed to say I am a Conservative. I voted Conservative in the last election. But what I am embarrassed about are the people who claim to uphold Conservative values are now living in Downing Street, embarrassing us at our own expense. And it's shameful.
Lots of my viewers still back Boris, and they don't like what they consider to be a sort of media campaign to bash Boris. Alys, don't you have a short memory? This is the guy that delivered a landslide victory, kept of course, Jeremy Corbyn out of number 10, which was probably good news for national security and the economy. And can you imagine how Labour would have handled the pandemic under Prime Minister Jeremy Corbyn? You're also forgetting that Boris got Brexit done. He delivered Freedom Day. Vaccine rollout was a success. I mean, aren't we being a little unfair on the Prime Minister?
I get asked that question a lot, actually. Maybe I come across rather too strong. No, I don't think I'm being unfair at all. I think if you had been in the situation, I've seen so many young people over the last 2 years have their lives absolutely ripped apart. We have lost education. We have lost friends. People have committed suicide. Universities abandoning our welfare. Little children not able to go out and interact. It's abuse. And I think if you'd been there in our student house when we found out about these new restrictions, we were crying with anger because we're just fed up at something that we are being constantly reprimanded for, which isn't even a big deal to us and most of the population. We have over 96.5% of this country have antibodies. This is not about the virus anymore. This is about control, and we should have realised this a long time ago.
My panel are coming in hot on a Sunday night. Edward Adoo, Alys Watson Brown and Leo Kearse are with me for the next 2.5 hours. Isn't it, going to my panel of Edward, Alys and Leo. Leo, briefly, if you can, that's one issue, is that woke comedy isn't very popular. Go woke, go broke.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, woke comedy, they try and push it. Netflix tried to push it so hard with Hannah Gadsby. But it's Dave Chappelle, the comedian that everybody's trying to cancel, who's shifting the tickets and getting all the eyeballs. So I think all this woke stuff that, honestly, the media, the arts are systemically woke. They're trying to push it so hard. But people at home don't want to watch it. They're not buying tickets.
Alys.
So it's all going to implode.
Exactly right. The public like a middle-aged Irish man dressed as a woman, Mrs. Brown's voice.
Yeah, public want controversy. That's what art is. Art is meant to make you question. I mean, the funniest moments of my life is when I sat down at, probably far too young age of 12 watching In-Betweeners. Half of the idea, I had no idea what was going on, but it wouldn't be allowed to be made now. And I think that's really sad because it's humour and you can just go, I don't like it and turn it off. You don't have to have a state mandate you telling you to do that. And as you said, it's ticket sales. If people don't want to see a person, they'll figure it out and then they will change their show or their approach to comedy as it stands.
Edward, you're a broadcaster, a DJ, an entertainer. The best comedy is the naughtiest comedy.
Eddie Murphy, please. Raw, delirious. Talking about Elvis, the way he walks, and made reference to the late, great Luther Vandross with his Kentucky Fried Chicken lips. There's other brands famous, by the way. I mean, we need some of that now, and that's the problem. It's got a bit too PC.
Too right. Oh, absolutely. I mean, is there anything, Edward, that makes you laugh in 2021? Are we being a bit harsh? Harsh on modern comedy?
It's a good question. I mean, I was just saying to the guys here, I always do the reruns of Eddie Murphy, classic Richard Pryor. Leo mentioned Dave Chappelle. I don't want to disrespect all the kind of newbie comedians out there, but if they want to make it sort of unique and groundbreaking, they've got to step up. They've got to kind of look to those legends who made their mark and made it revolutionary, because the likes, those scenes from Eddie Murphy make hilarious to the point where it makes me cry. Who does that in 2021? That's the problem. We need to find the next Eddie Murphy. That's what we need to do.
That's what we need. I've got 4 words for you, folks. Go woke, no joke. Reacting to the big stories of the day and tomorrow's newspaper front pages is my brilliant panel of comedian Leo Kearse, political commentator and writer Alys Watson Brown, and broadcaster and DJ Edward Adoo. Now, a social media influencer, Jess Davies, has opened up about being bombarded with explicit images. She wrote on Instagram, if you had thousands of men flashing women in the street, that's illegal and would start a huge conversation around the safety of women and the standards within society. It happens online and people laugh and seek to point blame. So do we need to legislate for digital flashing, cyber flashing? I'd never heard of this, Alys. Have you?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I've seen this happen to girls as young as 13 where they're just sent an explicit picture and it's intrusive, it's wrong, and I can't believe that it hasn't been criminalised thus far.
I mean, it's sort of an assault, isn't it?
It is sexual assault. It's an invasion of privacy with no consent, and it's just disgusting. And if you don't ask, no one asks for this kind of thing, and you are exposed to, especially if you're a young girl and you're exposed to a part of the world when you're so vulnerable and you're very prone to manipulation. You wouldn't know how to reply. What if you engage with it by accident? You could be, you could just lead down to just a horrible development of just, awful. And I support Scotland in this motion. I think they've had this, it's been illegal for the last 12 years. And I'm really surprised that nothing's been done about this previously. So I think this story is good. She's bringing attention to the matter that does really need to be addressed.
Yes, I mean, Edward, this isn't really about freedom of expression, is it, cyber flashing?
No, it's about decency, taste, and I've heard some horrid stories, and to think that it's still going on. I think if we kind of examine why this is done, I think it's a societal thing where I think it's that whole, in terms of, let's get to the crux of it. The whole kind of pub banter, guys kind of saying, oh yeah, let's. It's a very kind of blokish type thing where, that mentality of, we are superior, we can do this kind of thing. Male power. And the thing is, that's what needs to be identified. It needs to be quashed, and it needs to be asked why, as a bloke, why are other blokes thinking like that? Why do other blokes do that? And it's just degrading to the highest degree,
Yeah.
But I mean, to get to the point now that we're discussing it, and it should be even talking about it being sort of legislated or to take power now, why is it taking so long?
Yes, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan, Leo, of hate crime legislation. I don't think you are too, because I think it often does curtail free speech, and it's up to somebody, you know, possibly quite inexperienced, making a judgment about what is hate or what is not hate. However, sending a dick pic to a stranger, I mean, that's a sort of copper-bottomed crime, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Scotland's sort of leading the way in criminalising it. I don't know why they need to do it, but, you know, people need to send dick pics by cyberwave. If you're Scottish, just wait for a gust of wind to lift your kilt.
Exactly right. I mean, Princes Street in November, jobs are good.
Yeah. But I mean, like, seriously, if you wouldn't get your wanger out and show it to someone in the supermarket, then don't do it on Instagram or whatever.
Yeah,
you know,
it's no less of a crime, really.
Yeah, and it is. You know, a lot of people do get unsolicited dick pics. Some people ask for dick pics. You know, when you're in the courtship phase of dating.
I know you do.
Yeah. but yeah, and I mean, I guess you know everybody's got a camera on their phone, so it's made it so easy to. I remember in the old days. Well, you'll remember this, Mark, when you used to have to get the guy with the plate. No, the guy with the camera that you put the hood over, and then
create an electric.
Yeah, and there'd be the flash of phosphorus. You'd have to maintain an erection in the same position for 45 minutes.
Leo,
while
I thought you were going to.
It developed on the film, and now it's much easier. But yeah, I mean,
maintain an erection for 45 minutes. Those were the days.
You know,
it's invasive and it's
pre-millennium.
It's invasive and it's disrespectful, and I think it contributes to a culture where you know more serious crimes can happen.
Yeah. It also assumes that. You know, I think it's quite shallow. I think women do not just think about what the male's member look like when they want to court someone. Frankly, I think a lot of people think that it's not actually the most pretty part of a man before you see their face. So
yeah, but it's about what lures people to do that. You know, what has got us to that point where people think it's acceptable to do that. And Leo, they're talking. It just took me back. Imagine if back in the day people probably did that with remember Kodaks.
Oh,
yeah.
Polaroids.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and you'd have to go round to their mum's house and hand over a manila envelope and say, "This is for Susan," you know.
Yes, well, I've had all my Polaroids shredded, and for good reason. Now, we all know cats are evil. This proves it. Take a look at this.
Hey, leave her alone. Oh, baby. Oh, my God, are you okay? Are you okay? Oh.
Isn't that just fantastic? Will we ever tire, Edward, of these cat videos?
No. I mean, I think, you know, back in the day, it became You've Been Framed, Jeremy Beadle.
Yeah,
that was like the weekly fix of seeing those types of...
Cat TV,
yeah, it was. I mean, that's just...
And hungover bridegrooms as well.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, if I shouldn't say this, but if it was a Doberman, because I got bitten by a Doberman when I was 8 years old, and they didn't find the dog. So if that was the Doberman, I'd be applauding, saying yes.
Yeah, I used to be quite scared of Dobermans back in the day. Look, we've got so much to get through in the next hour of the show. Hear them first. Let's include, if we can, Frank, my fantastic panel in this: Edward, Leo, and Alys. Alys, what do you think? Do you feel that this issue about freedom of speech being curtailed is rather being oversold?
I don't think so. I think, speaking as a university student, I see it every day. I mean, I was told that I was completely missing the point by mentioning Brexit in a Liberty seminar. I've had people's essays marked down because they're supposedly too right-wing. This is a very real issue, and the fact that it is progressing and affecting young academics who want to write, who want to learn, who aren't dismissive of other people's views is really reductive.
Yes, I mean, we've seen, Leo, haven't we, certain comedians cancelled for their opinions on lockdowns and other COVID measures. And even before that, some comedians have been cancelled for supporting Brexit.
Yeah, absolutely. Alistair Williams, who's a fantastic comedian, by the way, like did all the big clubs. He's pretty much been completely cancelled from the comedy circuit because he did a routine about Brexit, a very funny routine. He was invited to perform it on stage at a Brexit party or UKIP thing. That just made him, for all that the arts, people in the arts and media say that they support tolerance and diversity. They certainly don't mean tolerance and diversity of people with different political opinions to themselves. And I can say as a right-wing comedian, people either assume that I'm mad doing it as some sort of grift or you know, they can't believe that a comedian can actually have the same political opinions as more than half of the voting electorate. If we're going to have true representation in the arts, surely we've got to allow people to support Brexit, openly support Brexit, or openly vote Conservative without people having to do it in private.
What's particularly worrying, Edward, as pointed out in Frank's fantastic article, it's universities where we're seeing the most censorship. And these undergraduates are the future of this country. They will be the lawmakers. They will be the politicians, the civil servants. They'll be shaping society.
Yeah, and that's the worrying thing, where I've had the understanding where people should be given a choice, regardless of political persuasion. I've come across instances where I may have said something. I'll give you a prime example. A very good friend of mine, Stacey Dooley, did something for Comic Relief, and I said, look, what she was doing was great. And there was literally a backlash on what I said, because they said, oh, you can't have, you know, a white person going to Africa. And for me, it's about the individual doing something. And I've been a champion, still continue to be a champion of diversity. And I think when it comes to those kind of conversations and topics, you're put in that bracket where if you're not adhering to the so-called status quo from what certain people are putting on the table, then you're seen as an outcast. And I saw that when I appeared on Good Morning Britain or Jeremy Vine. You know, I got tweets from people, vile tweets, you know, from people within the community who said some things, and it was really hurtful. But I think what I stuck to my guns, and I said, well, look, at the end of the day, I just merely said something based on what someone else would say. And I think it's got to the point where people don't like an opposing view. And I think that sometimes that's kind of infiltrated, I'm not saying every university, but I think for the next generation coming through, you know, everyone can't be programmed like robots to think the same. You know, we live in a democracy where everyone should be allowed to think and at least to have the freedom. So if the next generation is going to get to the point where if someone says something, they're going to cancel them, that's worrying.
Yes, Frank, we just don't do civilised discourse anymore, do we? Back in the day, people agreed to disagree, whereas now if someone takes a different view, they're the enemy.
I think so. I think we've lost the capacity to listen to each other. I think listening is really important. And even when you listen to somebody you really dislike their views, you'll find that at the very least what you can do is understand and learn why they think how they think. In other words, you can learn from what is it in the world that has made them have these mistaken views, and you can learn from that. And one of the tragedies at the moment is that in many university seminars, which is a venue for arguing and debating, you have a situation where a lot of young people censor themselves. And it's not just simply undergraduates who censor themselves. I get emails from young academics, and they say, look, we love what you're doing. You know, it's good that a professor like you, you know, is opening their mouth and arguing, but we're not confident that we can do this, because if we open our mouth, we're going to be ostracized, we're going to be marginalized. And I try to tell them, you know, you got to have the courage of your conviction, because, you know, at the end of the day, unless we all stand up and be counted, you know, we're going to lose this kind of battle. And it seems to me that somehow we need, because the majority of people in universities don't like what's going on. We just need to find a way of giving them a bit of courage so they can stand up and actually tell the world that, you know, we believe in free speech. You know, we don't want to censor ourselves. You know, we believe in democracy and we want to live freedom, you know, rather than be these embarrassed people that are kind of staying silent on the sideline.
Yes, because I think the majority of the public also hate extreme political correctness. I mean, most right-minded people hate racism and transphobia and homophobia, but what they reject is having their thoughts or words being sort of micromanaged, policed and curtailed. It's becoming like the thought police. But in the end, I think you're right, Frank, and that's the thrust of your article, is that we have to stand up to these people because actually they are the minority and they are bullies. This is bullying, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think there's a problem that's even bigger than the one we're discussing. And I really hope that one day on your show you can deal with this, which is a lot of the things we're discussing is now taking place in schools. And what we have within the curriculum, and this is a curriculum that begins in primary school and goes all the way through the A levels, is the introduction of a new orthodoxy that basically says that these are the views you can embrace, this is what you can say, but these are the sentiments that you mustn't express, because if you express them, then it means you're transphobic or homophobic or racist or whatever. And a lot of young kids, when they finish school, have literally been brainwashed or indoctrinated to the point at which they've kind of learned that arguing and debating is somehow wrong, is somehow illegitimate. And it seems to me that the really big battle of the future is no longer the university, but the school system. And I think a lot of people are very scared, to actually look at the problem that's going on there. And a lot of concerned parents, when they find out what their kids are learning in schools, don't want to believe it at first. And they are totally shocked that the kid comes back with such kind of illiberal, intolerant sentiments.
Frank, you'll hear them first. Let's include, if we can, Frank, my fantastic panel in this, Edward, Leo and Alys. Alys, what do you think? Do you feel that this issue about freedom of speech being curtailed is rather being oversold?
I don't think so. I think, speaking as a university student, I see it every day. I mean, I was told that I was completely missing the point by mentioning Brexit in a Liberty seminar. I've had people's essays marked down because they're supposedly too right-wing. This is a very real issue, and the fact that it is progressing and affecting young academics who want to write, who want to learn, who aren't dismissive of other people's views is really reductive.
Yes, I mean, we've seen, Leo, haven't we, certain comedians cancelled for their opinions on lockdowns and other COVID measures. And even before that, some comedians have been cancelled for supporting Brexit.
Yeah, absolutely. Alistair Williams, who's a fantastic comedian,
Brilliant.
by the way, like did all the big clubs. He's pretty much been completely cancelled from the comedy circuit because he did a routine about Brexit, a very funny routine. He was invited to perform it on stage at a Brexit party or UKIP thing. That just made him, for all that the arts, people in the arts and media say that they support tolerance and diversity. They certainly don't mean tolerance and diversity of people with different political opinions to themselves. And I can say as a right-wing comedian, people either assume that I'm mad doing it as some sort of grift, or they can't believe that a comedian can actually have the same political opinions as more than half of the voting electorate. If we're going to have true representation in the arts, surely we've got to allow people to support Brexit, openly support Brexit, or openly vote Conservative without people having to do it in private.
What's particularly worrying, Edward, as pointed out in Frank's fantastic article, it's universities where we're seeing the most censorship. And these undergraduates are the future of this country. They will be the lawmakers. They will be the politicians, the civil servants. They'll be shaping society.
Yeah, and that's the worrying thing, where I've had the understanding where people should be given a choice, regardless of political persuasion. I've come across instances where I may have said something. I'll give you a prime example. A very good friend of mine, Stacey Dooley, did something for Comic Relief, and I said, look, what she was doing was great. And there was literally a backlash on what I said, because they said, oh, you can't have, a white person going to Africa. And for me, it's about the individual doing something. And I've been a champion, still continue to be a champion of diversity. And I think when it comes to those kind of conversations and topics, you're put in that bracket where if you're not adhering to the so-called status quo from what certain people are putting on the table, then you're seen as an outcast. And I saw that when I appeared on Good Morning Britain or Jeremy Vine. I got tweets from people, vile tweets, from people within the community who said some things, and it was really hurtful. But I think I stuck to my guns and I said, well, look, at the end of the day, I just merely said something based on what someone else would say. And I think it's got to the point where people don't like an opposing view. And I think that sometimes that's kind of infiltrated, I'm not saying every university, but I think for the next generation coming through, everyone can't be programmed like robots to think the same. We live in a democracy where everyone should be allowed to think and at least to have the freedom. So if the next generation is going to get to the point where if someone says something, they're going to cancel them, that's worrying.
Yes, Frank, we just don't do civilised discourse anymore, do we? Back in the day, people agreed to disagree, whereas now if someone takes a different view, they're the enemy.
I think so. I think we've lost the capacity to listen to each other. I think listening is really important. And even when you listen to somebody you really dislike their views, you'll find that at the very least what you can do is understand and learn why they think how they think. In other words, you can learn from what is it in the world that has made them have these mistaken views, and you can learn from that. And one of the tragedies at the moment is that in many university seminars, which is a venue for arguing and debating, you have a situation where a lot of young people censor themselves. And it's not just simply undergraduates who censor themselves. I get emails from young academics, and they say, look, we love what you're doing. It's good that a professor like you, is opening their mouth and arguing, but we're not confident that we can do this, because if we open our mouth, we're going to be ostracized, we're going to be marginalized. And I try to tell them, you got to have the courage of your conviction, because at the end of the day, unless we all stand up and be counted, we're going to lose this kind of battle. And it seems to me that somehow we need, because the majority of people in universities don't like what's going on. We just need to find a way of giving them a bit of courage so they can stand up and actually tell the world that, we believe in free speech. We don't want to censor ourselves. We believe in democracy and we want to live freedom, rather than be these embarrassed people that are kind of staying silent on the sideline.
Yes, because I think the majority of the public also hate extreme political correctness. I mean, most right-minded people hate racism and transphobia and homophobia, but what they reject is having their thoughts or words being sort of micromanaged, policed and curtailed. It's becoming like the thought police. But in the end, I think you're right, Frank, and that's the thrust of your article, is that we have to stand up to these people because actually they are the minority and they are bullies. This is bullying, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think there's a problem that's even bigger than the one we're discussing. And I really hope that one day on your show you can deal with this, which is a lot of the things we're discussing is now taking place in schools. And what we have within the curriculum, and this is a curriculum that begins in primary school and goes all the way through the A-levels, is the introduction of a new orthodoxy that basically says that these are the views you can embrace, this is what you can say, but these are the sentiments that you mustn't express, because if you express them, then it means you're transphobic or homophobic or racist or whatever. And a lot of young kids, when they finish school, have literally been brainwashed or indoctrinated to the point at which they've kind of learned that arguing and debating is somehow wrong, is somehow illegitimate. And it seems to me that the really big battle of the future is no longer the university, but the school system. And I think a lot of people are very scared, to actually look at the problem that's going on there. And a lot of concerned parents, when they find out what their kids are learning in schools, don't want to believe it at first. And they are totally shocked that the kid comes back with such kind of illiberal, intolerant sentiments.
Reacting to the big stories of the day is my fantastic panel. We've got tomorrow's papers as well. Leo Kearse! I've known him for years. Always been a funny so-and-so. The brilliant political commentator and writer, Alys Watson Brown. I think it's your second appearance, Alys. Lovely to have you back. And making his debut, breaking his duck. I've known Edward since I was about, I think, 8. Broadcaster and DJ Edward Adoo. We attended the same Roman Catholic church, St. Dominic's Priory.
You did, and you saw me cloaked up as an altar server.
Well, I was disappointed that you didn't enter the priesthood, I've got to say.
I was.
You're on your way.
I was. So many people. I was an altar server for 10 years.
It's amazing. So what happened? What went wrong?
my mum. My mum went to one of the priors and said, you've got to try and convince Edward to come back to be an altar server, and more or less sort of lied and said that there was a big family function which never took place.
Yeah.
And I remember Father Dennis, rest his soul, said,
What a wonderful guy.
yeah, he said, your mum said that. I shouldn't be telling you this.
Aww.
But altar server for 10 years.
It's wonderful.
Could have done it.
Listen, you were always much holier than me, I've got to say. You still got that aura.
Oh, you're too kind.
You definitely
You're too,
do.
and listen, you and your family as well. Seriously.
Well, you know,
Great family.
Well, you know, it was lovely to be raised in that faith. Leo, were you an altar boy?
No.
Surprises me.
I only went to church.
I can see you waving incense.
We had, is this Catholic church or something?
Yeah.
There was a church.
I'm trying to picture
There's a church in the village. But no, I wasn't raised beholden to any particular voodoo. So, yeah, and I'm not an atheist either.
I will tell you this before we get to our brilliant bishop story, but my family my dad's, both my parents are from the Republic of Ireland, and my dad grew up in Cavan, which is a beautiful rural county close to the border with Northern Ireland, and big family, lots of brothers and a sister, and it was funny because his eldest brother, there was a tradition in the 1950s of American priests recruiting young Irish boys, by the way, this is not a bad story, teenagers, encouraging them into the priesthood. So you'd have sort of Roman Catholic churches in America that would sort of send a sort of police officer. Shall I just get this story out? A priest, and they just ring the doorbell and say, "Hello, I'm Father so and so, and we wondered whether your eldest son might."
Did you just knock on the door?
Priesthood." Yeah.
Wow.
They just knock on the door. So my dear Uncle Pat, who's no longer with us, essentially had a couple of meetings with this priest and flew to America and became a priest.
Oh my God!
Wow.
And how long do you have to be a priest before you can quit and just live in America?
Well, Uncle Pat got out after a couple of years.
Really?
Yeah, he entered
Amazing.
Civvy Street, but he had his dog collar. Then my dear Uncle Sean was also recruited. So the doorbell just was like, here we go again. And my dad was the youngest. He's watched all his brothers being sort of, taken away by the church. And so finally, one of these priests came back and there was a sort of round table chat for the family. And they looked over and they said, what's that young lad's name? And they said, well, that's Seamus, my dad's name. And he said, oh, he'd make a lovely priest, right? At which point my dad literally ran for the hills. Like, you're not getting me. And that was it. But it's a cracking thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
But look, I tell you something. We love this story. On the subject of faith, a Spanish bishop and an erotic fiction writer tied the knot this week. That's right, a Spanish bishop and an erotic fiction writer. After falling in love with a woman that he'd met, Xavier Goma has been forbidden from exercising any of the rights and duties inherent to the episcopal office. He has reneged on his oath as a man of the cloth, and he has allowed true love to conquer all. I would have thought, Edward, on a serious note, that that's a very difficult journey to make, because you make this commitment to God. Priests effectively marry God, don't they?
No, of course. I can. If Mum's watching us now, she's probably just throwing holy water at the TV, probably questioning why we're talking about this now.
Yeah.
But on a serious note, of course, it's that obligation to the Lord that a priest will make. So for a priest or bishop or anyone to kind of, in a sense, would you call it abstaining or just...
Yeah.
Or saying, well, look, I'm not committed. It's a big decision in their world, but then obviously it goes against all the ethos of the Catholic Church or just generally. It's the thing where it's not... no one would ever envisage a priest to make that decision.
No, it must. Feelings must have run deep.
But it can be healthy to not have any sort of sex.
Well, speak for yourself, dear.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, like, if
I've been
you're
married
priest...
for years.
But seriously, if you've got this occupation, being a priest, where you're not allowed to have sex with women, and then they put a frock on you, and you're in charge of young boys. Obviously, that's you've just designed the perfect job for a nonce.
I see everybody makes that perception of
Go on,
the
Edward.
priesthood where it's down to sex. It's beyond that. I think for them it's our favourite hobby is what we like. It's something that they've decided it's a vocation, And that's what it's the stereotype.
But Edward, and I totally agree with you. Of course, I understand that's the nature of the Catholic Church. It's the idea you take a vow of celibacy, that you are, as I mentioned earlier, sort of married to God. And, you know, we obviously know that there's a very, very sort of dark side to what's happened in the Catholic Church over many years, and it's the most appalling crimes imaginable. But it's not every priest, it's not every church. Do you think perhaps the Catholic Church should consider modernising, though? I mean, for example, what's the problem with letting Catholic priests marry or have a same-sex relationship?
I know there were conversations, and I think in our parish where we went to church, I think there was a nun who abstained and ended up getting married. So I remember having conversations with that particular nun who was saying that she felt that the Catholic Church should be more liberal and allow those options to be in place. So perhaps, I'm not sure whether in years to come, whether that discussion...
Well, I wonder whether it might preserve the future of the Church.
You think so?
Yeah.
Potentially, to modernise it. And it would certainly put fewer people off joining the priesthood, I would have thought.
Yeah, it would attract healthier, better candidates, I'd have thought.
Or maybe, you know, never say never. After your successful showbiz career.
And you know what? It would save people from knocking on the door.
Well, listen, by the way, I don't know if I'm betraying a personal confidence, but we can congratulate Leo because you are recently engaged.
Yeah, that's right.
To an extremely beautiful woman.
Yeah.
Congratulations. You make quite a handsome couple. Thank you. Well, here's the question for all of you. Is it time we did away with traditional marriage? Has Leo made a huge mistake? Shacking up. Well, of course, it's only an engagement, isn't it? Shacking up with the same person for 50 years. Well, no, now you're talking. Look, this is the question, right? Is being with the same person for 50 years a bit last century? Is monogamy even natural? Are we supposed to be with one partner for life? According to a new study, most of us could be tempted by an affair, a clear majority, apparently. So is it wrong, or is it just our natural instinct to procreate? Maybe everyone interviewed for the study was just a lying, cheating adulterer. Alys, what do you think? Is monogamy natural?
I think it is. I think it depends on your view of what a relationship is. I think it's an emotional connection where you both grow alongside each other. You're not dependent on each other, but you go through life paired and you experience things together. I mean, I think saying tempted to have an affair, I think it's ridiculous to deny that whether you're in a relationship or not, you will find other people sexually attractive. It's what you do with that attraction, though, whether you see the lustful, you know, primal urges as more important to a sustained, you know, stable emotional connection that you have with someone who you're in love with.
Yeah, what do you think, Leo? I mean, obviously you think monogamy is entirely natural.
Oh, yeah, no.
Mrs. Kearse is watching.
Absolutely. No, I mean, like, seriously, there's a lot of people, like, before I met her, I was on dating apps and stuff, and there's a lot of people who are like, you know, I'm polyamorous, but it's generally the ugly people. So they can't find a quality person to lock down. So instead, they're just having their pick of all the Uggs. So I think if you find, like, my fiancée is incredibly beautiful, incredibly intelligent. She drives me wild and crazy. So I just can't wait. I don't, you know, obviously I can look at.
You can't wait for what?
To get home tonight. But, like, obviously I can look at other women and see that they're attractive or whatever. But I don't want to. I have no problem just being locked down to.
I bet you can't wait for the wedding night when you finally get to consummate the relationship. Are you not sick of hugging and holding hands? It's a bit repetitive.
Our priest is helping us through it.
I mean, what do you think, Edward Adoo? Are you married?
I knew you were going to ask this question. None
of my business.
I'm a bachelor, single, on the run. That's what I say to people.
Thriving.
Yes,
you're
thriving.
a free man.
I'm a free man, but the thing is, it's the problem. Even you're talking about, Leo, talking there about sort of, you know, apps and trying to connect. I mean, even that is a problem in its own right. And I think living in London, especially during lockdown and generally just going out and if you don't have the time to try and connect with people, and when you do find someone and you try to make it special, even that can be problematic. And I suppose it's the temptation where some friends who've been married, I'm not going to mention them because I don't want to ruin any marriages on the show tonight, but they easily get tempted and lured by whether it's at work or at a party. And you have to commend those people who have been in long-lasting relationships. How did they do it?
You do wonder, don't you? I mean, I think it's about making a decision, which is what you have wonderfully done with your other half, is that you just decide, look, there are an unlimited number of potential partners out there. but this person is just so special and I want to get old with them. And it's just about making that decision. And it is a trade-off, Alice, isn't it? I mean, as you mentioned, you have to accept that it means you won't be able to get off with other people.
Yeah.
But you know that for the kind of risk-reward ratio, that it just about works out.
Exactly. It shouldn't matter that, I can't shag someone when I go out tonight because, it's annoying. But those kind of interactions, they're not emotionally, they don't cause any emotional fruition. That's just purely physical, purely objectifying. I think especially as, women going around and sleeping around, seeing that as empowerment, I don't personally.
You must introduce me to those women.
Yeah, I don't personally think it's.
Actually, introduce them to Edward.
It's also, I think, the reason why you go into a relationship. You shouldn't go, I need a relationship for life to be complete. A relationship is something that, my life is complete, but this is just an added bonus. I'm with this person. This is incredible. And I think when you go into a relationship for those kind of reasons, you're much less likely to be crying over the fact that you can't get off with someone on a sports night on a Wednesday at uni.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And
Quite a specific anecdote there. Revealed quite a lot.
That's not an anecdote.
Listen, Alice, we've all had a drink.
But it's the deep, meaningful aspect of the relationship and trying to build where a lot of people, it tends to go wrong because they end up going to the sports centre thinking, you know what, Wednesday night, great. He or she's not going to know about it. Then suddenly, someone sends a...
This is uni
Sound like there's a lot of sport going on there.
Come to Bristol on a Wednesday with all the lacrosse girls. I love it.
Lacrosse girls. Poor old Leo, he's quite focused on the lacrosse girls now.
I don't think it would be a good look for me to travel to Bristol and try and hit on a lacrosse team.
Leo's thinking, no, it's like,
it's quite brilliant.
Yeah. But I think if you're tempted to cheat, you're with the wrong person.
Exactly.
Well
you
said.
choose your soulmate.
Or you've got the wrong attitude, you've not been able to make that commitment.
But doesn't it all boil down to respect? That's what it's all
And
about.
attachment.
Yeah, I love that look in Leo's eyes when Alice said lacrosse girls.
Either people recoil sometimes.
That's got to be an internet meme, hasn't it? Lacrosse girls. Listen, let's cool things down a bit. To freeze or not to freeze? That's the question. We all have that emergency pizza in the freezer, don't we? Or that carton of Haagen-Dazs. But have you ever prepped and frozen a full Christmas dinner? Well, food consultant Kate Hall definitely does. She shared her tips on how to make Christmas dinner more manageable. It may seem strange, but I've seen stranger. So what's the strangest thing that you've put in the freezer? Edward, are you a man that uses a freezer? Because I believe there are two types of people. The kind of people that freeze everything and others who are all about the fresh produce.
It's all about the freshness for me.
Yeah.
Seriously. I mean, even thinking of having, Christmas dinner in the freezer now is just wrong.
Yeah. It's just too organised, isn't it?
It's not so much the organisation, it's not gonna have the same taste.
I agree. There's something very sad about the idea of roast potatoes caked in ice. What do you think? Or even sliced turkey.
Well, no,
like those lonely dinner for ones.
Try and style it out. Once you eat it, you're thinking, no, it's fine, it tastes succulent. In actual fact, you're like, no, it's been in there for like 3 weeks.
But can you imagine how relaxing her Christmas day is? It's all in the freezer.
Roast potatoes aren't that stressful.
Yeah, but there's other stuff as well.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's something you can freeze other thing, but I think when you're talking about roast potatoes, you don't need to freeze them. I think freezing a turkey after you've cooked it, absolutely. You might as well just not have a turkey. To be honest, you might as well have a lasagna.
So what would you freeze?
Well, nothing.
Okay.
I mean, maybe pigs in blankets and some stuffing, and my peas and carrot. Veg.
What about ice cream?
Frozen veg.
What about ice cream?
Well, that's usually frozen.
Yeah. I think what the trouble is, we've got a panel who aren't responsible for cooking the Christmas dinner.
Sounds
so
like
saying, don't bother doing this. Come on, whoever's cooking it, it's like a military operation. There's so many different dishes on the table. They've all got to be cooked and ready at the same time. And the person doing it just wants to get drunk and watch James Bond. So give them a break.
This is why people have alternative Christmases. And a colleague of mine is going to her local Indian restaurant because she said she's not having...
Wonderful.
Yeah, it's to make it easier, so less stress. You don't have to think about putting...
Vindaloo.
Yeah,
bring it on.
But then the waiters...
Not roast madras.
You know what? I would, for 1 year, I'd love to do that and just have, some pilau rice, peshwari naan. Please bring it on for Christmas for 1 year.
Right.
It's 1 year.
Eggnog masala. I mean, I think that the freezer culture is generational. Because my parents, they're well into their freezer. When we grew up, we had something called a chest freezer. Do you know what that is?
Yeah.
This is massive trunk.
Yeah.
And in one particular hot summer, I remember dunking my head in that freezer endlessly just to cool down. But my mother was very organised, and she had, frozen peas. I mean, she seemed to have an obsession with garden peas, but sausage rolls, steaks, you name it. And I think that we've lost the art of freezing food. I think that we've got a convenience culture now. It's instant food, isn't it? Sort of ready meals.
Well, yeah, growing up in the countryside, people would buy like half a cow.
Yes.
Half a cow, like all butchered and then put in the chest freezer.
You saw that was a cow in the freezer, Leo. 'Cause I know you come from a very sort of vibrant family setting.
Yeah,
Quite a few characters in your family.
Well, funnily enough, my dad, he was driving home one night and he found a deer by the side of the road, and he got out and it was still warm, so it had been recently, hit by a truck or something. So he cut its leg off with a big knife and chucked it in the back of the car, and we ate it.
Yeah,
Ever the pragmatist.
Yeah,
So you remember eating that deer?
Yeah. Yeah.
At least it was a leg. My dad actually once froze a sheep's head in the freezer, to the great grief of my vegetarian mum. Didn't go down well.
I can't even join this little mini conversation about freezing.
Well, I mean, I know some people, a horror of horrors. A friend of mine has just moved into a flat, and it's fridge only. It's a fridge only flat.
You can't meal prep.
And he said, I don't need a freezer. I don't use a freezer. How can you not use a freezer?
That's terrible. And if you buy Magnum ice lollies, then you've got to eat 4 in one sitting.
What if you need ice cubes?
Exactly.
How are you going to have...
So what can you and can't you freeze? Would you freeze bread?
Yeah.
Yes.
You would, OK. Would you freeze meat?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, meat is the best, especially a section of deer. I mean, by the way, your dad said that was a deer. I wonder. I think we might be entering the uncharted waters of unsolved crimes here. Who knows? But look, I think it's also an organisation thing, because the idea of freezing means that you probably have some knowledge of cooking, because you've purchased raw ingredients which are in the freezer, you're planning ahead, and I think that's what we don't have now, Alice. I mean, can you think of any of your mates that use the freezer?
I do. I mean, so beginning of every week at uni, it's just cheaper and it saves time. I make this huge either like ratatouille and I just put it in the freezer for the whole week.
For the whole week?
Well, yeah, because it will feed me. Because you can go to Aldi and buy, 2 aubergines. Like, this is really
That's
boring.
before you go to the sports centre.
This is to bulk me for sports night on Wednesdays, yeah. But I'll usually freeze all of that throughout the week, just so, A, it saves time, and also when you're sharing a house, like a student house, say, with 5 other people, you don't have much fridge space. So the freezer is your best friend. And also, you save money.
Well, it's good. I don't want to sound ageist. It's good that you're doing it, because what you mentioned earlier on about being a generational thing, I don't know anyone other than, say, our parents or someone of a certain age who puts things in freezers.
Exactly, and thinks ahead like that. I will give you one really crucial role of the freezer, and perhaps I'm revealing too much in this anecdote. You know when you get home after a long day and you want a beer, but it's in the cupboard.
Oh, you shove it in the freezer. And
goes in the freezer for 10, 15 minutes. Job's a good one.
Do you know the magic trick? You wrap it in wet tissue or a wet tea towel, and it chills so much faster.
Is that right?
Harnesses the power of evaporation.
Spoken like a
I used to do that.
That's a great tip.
I used to do that with Lucozade back in the day.
Yeah.
Every time I had a headache, I was obsessed. All my friends thought I was mad. They're like, Ed, why do you love drinking Lucozade when you've got a headache? So I'd put the Lucozade in the freezer for about half an hour, and then suddenly it was like...
So refreshing.
Yeah.
Lucozade was a big thing in the 80s,
It was.
wasn't it? Whatever happened to Lucozade?
It's still around. It's a hangover cure.
But do you know... was it hangover cure? But in the old days, it used to come in an orange bottle, which had this sort of strange orange wrapping on it.
It did.
Is that right?
Yeah.
But I think the formula is different, because I think 80s Lucozade was basically sugar, water, and a bit of colouring. But it's gone all fancy now. It's like isotonic.
And electrolytes.
Yeah.
All that.
There was an advert campaign recently. It was basically Lucosade's better than water. Water's rubbish. take Lucozade instead. I look forward to my freebie arriving in the post. Look, we've got a couple of things to squeeze in before we go. The birth of a child is always a wonderful occasion, so congratulations to the wonderful actress and TV presenter Joanna Page. The star of Gavin and Stacey has given birth to her daughter, who she gave a quirky name. I think it's really cute, Bo Willow Russell, but it is a little unconventional, so it got us to thinking about names and how important they are. Can a child's name affect their chances in life? Should parents take more care when naming their kid? Here are the most popular names of 2021. Let's take a look. First of all, boys' names. Oliver. What else do we have? George. I guess little Prince George. Noah. Excellent. And Arthur. All very charming names. Where's Edward? Where's Mark? And where's Leo? What an insult. Has being called Leo served you well?
Yeah, I think it's distinctive. In Scotland, everybody thought it was a bit, growing up, everybody thought it was a bit...
Serious?
A bit, English. English.
The worst insult.
Yeah.
Oh, Leo, you got an English name.
But I don't think Bo Willow is a particularly outrageous name. I think in the 70s, people were giving their kids ridiculous names, like Frank Zappa called his kid Moon Unit or Moon Unit 1.
Wow.
And David Bowie, I think, did they call his son Zowie? Zowie Bowie.
Yeah, you do have to wonder, don't you? Of course, there was, I think, Apple, the child of Chris Martin, and Gwyneth Paltrow was Apple. What do you think, Edward? Has Edward served you well?
It has. The thing is, sometimes people like to refer to me as Ed or Edward, like when I'm doing radio. So what should we call you? Should we call it just Edward? Edward's fine. I think.
But do you know what I love about your name? If you want, you can become a captain of industry.
Yeah.
Sir Edward Adoo, right?
Thank you.
Always possible.
Yeah.
Or if you wanted to be sort of down with the kids, you can be Eddie. So it's a really flexible.
Very flexible.
It's a very flexible name.
Or Ted.
Or Ted. Big Ted.
Yeah.
T-Dog.
Yeah, T-Dog, exactly.
Alice, you've got a really pretty name, which is Alice.
Thank you.
With an unusual spelling, and a really nice
Yes.
spelling. Alys.
It's Welsh, and a lot of people, when they first meet you, go, Alys. And it's... I really like it. I think the normal spelling of Alice is boring. It's like Alice. No.
Yeah. Oh, I like
absolutely
it.
not. I have no... It's not served me well. It's made me more distinctive. I remember I used to work for a pub when I was sort of 17, 18, and I didn't work for them for a couple of years, and I rang them up and I said, hi, can I have my job back? And they said, hang on, who are you? And I was like, my name's Alice. And they're like, oh, yeah, you're the one with the funny name. Yeah, we don't remember you, but come in, I remember your name. So
it helps.
Having an interesting name helps.
Alys. I love that spelling, Alys Watson Brown. There's a brilliant comedian called Tanya Moore, who we both know, and she does a stand-up routine about her name because Thania, even though it's Tanya.
Yeah.
And I think it's because her dad was drunk or something.
Oh, really?
When they did the birth certificate. But it served her well.
Oh, Michael
too.
McIntyre was Jeff's Geoffs.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah, it was,
Imagine.
That's
Too funny,
Yeah.
isn't it?
So that was his original name, his real name.
Well, no, he did this routine talking about Jeffs and said,
Oh, yeah,
About
right,
these
right.
unusual names.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
a classic routine. Girls' names that are most popular: Olivia, Emma, Amelia, and Ava. But I do think we should have Alys, Alice, on that list
I
too.
agree.
There you go. That's where one of my eggs, the female eggs, is definitely going in that direction. Okay. Now, this the modest terrace house that was made famous by Gavin and Stacey has attracted 28,000 visitors over 10 years. So it's the house from Gavin and Stacey, and it's got so many people going there and taking photos of that house, and it goes to show how important mise-en-scène can be when making film or television. It got us to thinking about the iconic houses of cinema and the small screen. So we're going to play a great British game show. We're going to play a game of How's That? That's right. You've got to look at the house from a TV show or a movie and tell me what that film or TV show is. So I want you to play along at home and my panel as well. Let's start with house number one. How's that? Right. Do we know what that house is?
Yeah.
Oh, I do. Home Alone.
Yeah.
Well done. Perfect Christmas movie, by the way.
Yeah.
Have to fire that one up soon. Second one. What's this house? It's from a TV show. North of the border.
Balamory.
Balamory. Well done. Gorgeous little scene, isn't it? How about this house? Rather posh and upmarket.
Downton.
yeah.
Downton Abbey.
Yeah.
Addicted to that show. House number 4, a bit spooky.
Oh, no.
The Exorcist.
Yeah.
No, go again. It could look like The Exorcist. There's one of those movies where a body is in the freezer of an ice cream freezer, if you remember that.
Is it Psycho?
It is Psycho.
It just
well
came
done.
up with this.
Funny that the freezer bit was quite triggering there for
I know
young Leo.
this one.
Okay, yes. Which house is that?
Oh, no. It's, yeah.
Is that the Goonies?
It is The Goonies, classic 80s comedy, The Goonies. How about this one? House number 6 from a TV show.
Oh, Fresh Prince.
Yeah, exactly. It
Yeah.
looks like the White House, but it's the Fresh Prince. Well done, Edward. How about house number 7?
That's not Buckingham Palace, is it?
It's
It looks
not,
like Kenwood
unless
House.
Unless it's shrunk. No, it's not Kenwood House. It's a period drama.
Oh.
Think of
Upstairs, downstairs.
Mr. Darcy.
Oh, Pride and Prejudice.
Pride and Prejudice. That's right, the TV adaptation. And then how about this one? There's a bit of a brain teaser for you, the last one. It's an American comedy from the 90s, I think.
The Wonder Years?
It's Cheaper by the Dozen.
Oh.
There you go. An absolute film classic. I want to thank you so much for your company tonight. Thanks to my amazing panel, all my guests.